Good morning, everyone. I'm going to get used to saying good morning and not good afternoon, and welcome to the final bizval webinar for the year. It's an unusual time slot for us, but it is the final webinar as most people in South Africa start winding down for the holiday season, and as our Northern Hemisphere clients, friends, and partners start to build snowmen. I'm Graham Stephen, the co-founder and CEO of bizval, and today I'm joined by my fellow co-founders, Howard Blake, and my regular co-host, the Finance Ghost. So today is somewhat different. We're going to keep it more fireside chat as we just reflect on the year that has been for bizval. bizval is now 18 months old, and we're going to share some of our stories and learnings, both from a bizval perspective and from some of our clients over the past 18 months. So I just want to remind everybody that we are still running our Winner Bootcamp giveaway up until the 15th of December, which coincidentally happens to be my birthday as well. That is valued at 40,000 Rand. To qualify, you simply need to do either one express valuation, which is completely free, which gives you one entry. You can do a live valuation, which is paid for and gives you 5 entries, or a concierge valuation, which gives you 10 entries into the draw. So you've still got time to get your entries in or to refer it to your friends. And before we get started, just some quick housekeeping. The chat section is set to private, so only presenters and moderators can see your questions. But please feel free. It is fireside chat today, so we'll have a few minutes at the end for questions. But please feel free to add questions as we go along, and we can pick those up in the discussion. We are recording the webinar, and especially this time of the year, it'll be available on YouTube. Something comes up, or you're sitting on a beach and you want to listen to it with a margarita in hand over December. Please check out the handouts section. Actually, there are no handouts today, but check out our website and go and check our blog section there, where you'll find our latest newsletter and everything, which will be posted at the end of the week. So we always run a poll. Today is no different. So just to recap on the insights from our previous webinar, we ran a poll. We said, how old would your business be when you want to sell? So last time we spoke about getting ready to sell your business. And, more than half, the biggest responders, 38%, said more than 10 years old. So very few people said less than 3 years old. So most of our business owners and people listening on the webinar understand that it takes some time to build a business that has value, not the sort of build and shift quickly kind of model. So that's what we saw from our last webinar. Today's poll is a fun one. It is, what is your favorite way to spend the holiday season? So go check out the poll section, and the options are at home with friends and family, somewhere on a beach or island, a city getaway, and I'm in retail, what holiday? So go and complete the poll. If you've missed any of our previous webinars, remember these are available both on our website and on the YouTube channel. So I think without any further ado, what we're going to do today is we're each going to share sort of 2 or 3 reflections on the past year. We could spend hours reflecting, but Howard, the Ghost, and myself have each chosen our sort of 2 or 3 biggest learnings that we want to share as we're building bizval. And to get started, let's hand over to Howard. And, I guess the question to Howard is, Howard, you've been an entrepreneur for, over 40 years. You've started over 30 companies. Why and I'll give away your age because people can work backwards, but why at 61, even though you look 51, or having built 30 businesses, maybe you look 71, but why are you so passionate about bizval? And what's been different about this journey so far?
Graham, I think it's the whole reason why we started bizval. We knew that statistically over 60% of the global workforce is employed by entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneurial community employs more people in government, large corporates and everybody else, but they're an incredibly underserviced community in many respects. And I'm passionate about bizval because I've lived this experience. I grew my business and was afraid to interrogate its value. It was at the back of my mind. The most important thing was building the business, getting it going and making it sustainable, employing people in a safe and economically safe environment. and you take all the risk associated with that. And it's really about the chase and getting it built. But entrepreneurs are a neglected community. They, by nature, they strong-willed, independent, and they get on with the job. We understand, and in our years of experience, as we've discussed it as a team, we understand the value of our value. But how many other people, how many entrepreneurs understand value? And that's why we built bizval, and that's why we're so passionate about it, because we're able to give back to this community, we're able to empower our community, and we're able to share insights within their businesses that help them grow the value of their business and be able to achieve a higher value. And it might be that they want to hold the business forever and keep it in the family, and it's going to be a dividend rich environment, or it might be they're looking to raise some money to grow it, or it might be that they want to do some M&A activity, or they might want to even offload it. And we see the full spectrum of that coming through. But what we do understand is that our community is benefiting from our services, and we're able to give them deep insight into how their value is constructed and what their businesses are worth and what they can do with it. And for us, it's been very satisfying to see that journey, and our interaction, through the website and through the different opportunities that have come to us have shown that to us. But Graham, what about you? It's your, you're the new CEO, and you've had to take control of bizval and oversee the growth and the dynamic things that have happened this year. And it's been a really busy year. So how have you become your own CEO? How have you put the Graham Stevens stamp on what you do? And how have you achieved focus in that regard?
So Howard, thanks. It's a great question. And, I think, I've been in a number of roles. I've had my own consulting business, worked for other people, but I think bizval is so the first business that we're building as a business, I guess, that could potentially be sold and all of that one day from day one. And I think, what I've learned is, being in that sort of CEO role, and ignore the title, but about creating vision and alignment is probably one of the sort of most important things that I've had to do, both with the team we're building as well with our clients. I've realized that as a business, you need to be clear on what your vision is for your clients, but that vision is actually your client's vision. So what problem are you solving for your clients, and how do you do that? So that's a big learning I've had this year. But the point around being your own CEO, I think that's something that I've really had to kind of take on board this year. You read the textbooks around what does being a CEO mean? How do you be a successful CEO? And I think, through the engagement with our clients, so we're dealing with founders, MDs, CEOs all the time, and also through mentors, and how it's, I guess, it's something that you've kind of coached me along as well, is you've got to identify that what makes you as the CEO tick. There's no blueprint for this, and you've got to bring your true and authentic self to the party, and no one or two CEOs are the same. Don't try and be the textbook MBO CEO. Understand what your superpower is, what makes you different, and focus on that. If it means you're good with people, focus on that. If it means you're good with clients or strategy, like, find out what makes you unique and then sort of lean into that. So that's the one thing that I've learned. The other thing, I guess, with any new venture is there comes a time when you need to commit, and you need to commit fully. So when we started bizval, it was a bit of a seedling of an idea. We didn't know whether it was going to work. We were all doing this on the back of our desks as a sort of a part-time job. And I remember a conversation we had probably in December last year where it was like, look, we're getting traction. Our clients are, seeing value in what we're doing. And I was running a consulting business on the side. And at that point, I realized I had to fully commit. That kind of meant going all in. It's quite a hard mental shift to make, especially when when you're running a consulting business, you've got 6 or 7 different sources of income. It's quite a comfortable space in many respects. But what I realized after I made that mental shift, and then the physical shift of actually taking on bizval full time, is the business has actually grown exponentially since then. So it's been helped by having a great team on board. I'm surrounded by great co-founders, but also the team that we're building and the clients that we're building. So having a supportive team really helps. And, the last point I want to make is that, you also have to realize you can't do everything yourself. You have to focus. So, I've got this thing which I call the rule of three is, I've my to-do list. I always used to have these long to-do lists. Now I have sort of a to-do list of three things, and that might change, every couple of weeks. But what are the three things that I'm focusing on now? And that's really helped me to create focus. And it's something, also when we're chatting to a lot of successful business owners, I see the same thing. Those businesses that are thriving, those businesses that are got huge value and on good growth trajectory, focus is something that comes out very, very clearly. It's not the guys who are trying to do too many things. And sometimes it's hard because you want to, as I'm naturally a bit of a people pleaser. So I want to keep everybody happy and I want to juggle lots of balls. So that's been a conscious shift that I've had to make. But it's certainly been great for my mental health and also, I guess, the progress as the business. So, yeah, Howard, I mean, those are kind of some of my sort of key learnings. With that, I'm going to hand over the mic to Ghost, and I guess one of the things we've done, and we're quite big advocates of this, is we've kind of bootstrapped, let's call it bizval from the ground up. And I say bootstrap quite loosely because we have had funding and but not VC funding. So there's this kind of murky area between pure bootstrapping where you're eating bread and water for 5 years before you make it, through to VC where you have this massive windfall. But Ghost, I want to ask you, just talk a little bit about the journey of bizval and the sort of bootstrapping versus VC approach and kind of how that's played out for us.
Yeah, thanks, Graham, and thanks to those who tuned in. So I think, look, from a bootstrapping perspective, I've certainly lived that when I started the Finance Go specifically. That you don't have an investor, you don't have VC. You kind of have to figure out, how do you replace your corporate salary as quickly as possible? And that's a very different way of thinking. It's very much just taking whatever you can get, all those great textbooks about how you need to focus and have a clear strategy and everything else. Yeah, that's great. It's not so great when you have debit orders. So you kind of have to start where you can. And then you get to a point. I think one of the hardest parts for me on the bootstrapping journey was firing my first client. It was very, very weird for me. I'd never grown up with money. I'd kind of got in the sense to the point where it was doing okay. And then you have to let a client go because they're actually not paying you enough for your time. You've got better things you can do with your time. That's a very, very big inflection point for anyone, I think. In this, with the backing of Howard specifically, it's been a very different journey. And I think it's clear for me to see how the decisions then end up being a little bit different. You've got some runway to build the thing, and then you can make different decisions. But I think what's been quite interesting as well, and probably irritated Howard a bit, is our more cautious, bootstrappy nature. I think, Howard, you've invested in a lot of businesses. I doubt you've ever had a tighter group of people who don't want to spend your money as opposed to people who do want to spend your money.
True.
More than once we had
True.
a conversation like, please, can you guys actually just do this? Because I know it costs money, but I'm not getting any younger. So, these are the kind of things that have been a bit different and interesting for me. And I think it also puts us in a good position when we're dealing with clients to understand the ones who are bootstrapping and have bootstrapped versus the ones who are VC funded, and especially the ones who are considering bringing in either VC or private equity. When you've got an investor in your business who isn't around the table with you, like how it is with us, it's a very different conversation. You're basically reporting to a big boss as opposed to actually building with someone who's kind of very involved in the business. And those are two completely different things. So personally, look, I always advocate for building something sustainable. I think a lot of the lessons that VC tries to teach entrepreneurs are extremely damaging. I never make myself popular by saying that, but it's a fact. A VC makes 10 investments. They want 2 to do well and 8 to fail. Well, they don't want 8 to fail, but it will happen. Now, the problem is if you're one of the 8, your life is kind of sitting there in tatters and you were just part of a number in a VC portfolio. So make no mistake, when pure play VC investors are guiding you on what to do, they're doing it because they are playing the get rich or die trying card, which may or may not be correct for you as an entrepreneur, depending on where you are in your life. So I think building something sustainable is always a good idea, but it's been great to have a bit more runway to do it and to kind of contrast that to how I started the Finance Ghost when it was literally pure bootstrapping of note. And I guess, Howard, that also talks to sort of global aspirations, which we obviously have with bizval. And again, it's the power of being able to have that runway and just think longer term. I think you said it from the start. As South Africans, we need to look broader, and bizval does have global aspirations, and maybe you're the right person to talk about them.
Yeah, it's something I've been really passionate about right from the start of our journey, and it's only off the back of experience I have in other businesses and that I've started in South Africa. And if you don't have a global mindset, you will build a business based on a rand denominated value, which in a global context depreciates generally faster than you're able to build it. So that's why global is so critical for us. And also there's a second point to the global side, and I know I really wind both the Ghost and Graham up about this all the time. I'm a bit rabid about my anxiety to get the foreign domains up and running, simply because the longer you take, the longer it does take. And it's such a critical importance, because if your product is globally relevant, it's a huge affirmation of what you've built. If you've got a lot of customers in the UK and in the USA and all over the world, I mean, we have interest from absolutely everywhere. I don't know how many continents it was, but we've done valuations now, I think on 6, if I'm not wrong. And that's confirmation that your product works. And as an entrepreneur,
We haven't done Antarctica yet, Howard.
No, that's only one, but there was one in Denmark or Norway. We're getting close. So if you think about it, the validation of a global market is, from an entrepreneur's point of view, is so exciting, because most of us, well, we're definitely not just here for the money, but just to see that business get globally recognized and to be used by people all over the world, and for them to get a great result is amazing. And I think for me, that's what makes it. So the globalization drive is really about validity of the business concept, and then also making it's, we tell everyone, know your value. Well, we know that our value is predicated on being of service to a market bigger than South Africa. So, Graham, you are banging away at being the CEO in the business. You're doing a great job. Talk to us about the importance of your team.
So I think, yeah, I mean, building a team is absolutely critical. But I think we preach this to, they say you got to practice what you preach. We always talk about owner independence. And, one of the biggest drivers of value is, can the business operate independently from the owner? And I genuinely can't emphasize this one enough. We look at the data, it shows it. We look at the 4,500 valuations that bizval has done over the last 18 months. Is the data absolutely supports it. We tell our clients this every single day, but you have to still be intentional about it. It doesn't just happen by default. So, for example, there was a point when I was doing strategy, sales, social media, finance. I was doing all the valuation reviews. A bit about that sort of bootstrap versus having some funding. You're wanting to keep the costs low, but I was actually burning out. It was 14, 15, 16-hour days, and this is very early on in the journey. We're still early, but in the first few months, trying to juggle a couple of other consulting clients and that on the side as well. And at that point, we had to sit down as a team and we said, look, we have to do two things. We have to identify what our strengths are. So what do I do well? What does Howard do well? What does the Ghost do well? So split the sort of key responsibilities. And we did that quite early on. And then the second thing, which is always hard for somebody who likes to watch pennies a little bit, is we had to hire ahead of the curve. So we had to bring people into the team to handle some of those things. So whether it was administrative tasks like setting up webinars, managing our social media, all of those important things, the actual operations of the business. So, putting processes, and yes, we've automated and built a lot of technology to support that, but you still need to be intentional around actually running those processes. So we had to hire ahead of the curve to do that. We had to commit to bringing people into the team before we had the money to pay them, so to speak. And that is hard, and that is emotionally very hard. But once we've done that, our growth has kind of, skyrocketed. And I think, yeah, it's because of that intentionality. I think the important thing as well is we spent a lot of time finding good cultural fits. We talk about this in practice, but early stages of the business is hire people who really share the same value set. Yes, competencies are given. They've got to have the right skill set, but finding the right people, we spent a little bit longer trying to hire. Yes, we were ahead of the curve, but it was important that we found people who lived the same value system as us and bought into that vision. So, and when that happened, it was a step change in bizval's approach. I could focus on what I did well, and we had a team on board that could then help service our clients better. And the first time you get a great Google review, the first time you hand over for somebody else to service the customer, you kind of wonder, are they still going to get a 5-star review? And the reviews just got better, to be quite honest. Clearly, the people we hired were better at engaging with customers than I was. So, yeah, that was, I guess, validation of that. But for me, yeah, that's kind of been a bit of the journey that I've been on. And I touched a little bit on that about we're building. So we built the team, but underneath that, from day one, we always had sort of the technology, and we built a product, I guess, which we took to market. And we spent a lot of time about making sure that the product works, but then also innovating and testing and refining that. So I guess as the chief architect of that product and the bizval engine, Ghost, I mean, maybe just talk to us a little bit about, that product evolution journey. Like, how have we gone about it? What have been some of the learnings along the way there?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I mean, it's been a while since you phoned me up and said, "Hey, I've got this guy, Howard. I think you should meet him, and we want to potentially build this valuation model. Are you in?" It feels like a long time ago, and there's been a lot that we've learned along the way, right? And I think the biggest thing I've learned with building businesses, and not just bizval, is that what you end up with versus what you thought you were going to build are probably going to be two different things. You might end up more or less directionally similar to what you expected to build if you're lucky. But I think you're going to iterate so many times that you'll look back in a year or 2 years or 3 years and you'll wonder, how on earth you got to the conclusions you got to when starting the business about not just what you would build, but also who you would sell it to. The market will give you feedback very, very quickly and make sure you know if you're on the right track or not. And I think if you are too married to an idea, that's very, very dangerous for an entrepreneur. You have to listen to what the market is telling you. There are absolutely no prizes in this world for being the mad scientist who builds something that people actually don't want. I think we've been lucky. I think the product has resonated relatively easily. We had to tweak it a little bit in terms of how we position it. But I think, our base thesis, which was there's a need for professional valuations at a price that entrepreneurs can afford, has turned out to be correct. And that also brings me to, another important point around just product and innovation and all of that, which is, yes, it's important to start with an addressable gap in the market, but I also do think you need to play to your raw strengths and abilities. And you kind of touched on it in what you were saying. You need to be able to innovate, and you're only going to be able to innovate from a place where you are actually genuinely good at something. So this is not the sort of corporate, everyone is excellent, everyone is equal, and don't worry if you've got something wrong. Here's a performance management program for the next 6 months. It's very mollycoddle in that environment. It's nothing like that in a startup whatsoever. The market doesn't put you on performance management. It just doesn't hire you. So you have to be able to actually innovate in order to survive. And you've got to do something with your life that you're actually genuinely good at. And you've got to figure out what that is, because you've got to do all these iterations on whatever it is you're building. So I'm not a fan of over planning a business, but I think that the core of what you're doing needs to be figured out fairly quickly. If you're going to fail, then fail fast. That is something that VCs teach, and I think it is one of the sort of better lessons, actually. And I think, Howard, that maybe leads into a conversation around a little bit of goal setting and what does that really look like for a startup? We just talked about how it's hard to plan, but also you have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy. You can't just wake up in the morning and guess. So how do you think about that?
Ghost, it was interesting for us because we came up with a product idea. The three of us had the product idea, and then we had to set goals, which we did. And of course, the first goal is to develop the tech. But if you think of the goals that are set, it leads to structure and direction. And in a way, it's a navigator's true north. So without goals, there's no structure and you fail in your direction. So in our journey, it was first we had to establish our technology. We had to test its validity. We had to establish its accuracy, and there was no better way than to take it straight to the market and allow accounting firms, firms of lawyers, all sorts of professionals started to use it. And right out the gate, it was accurate and it was valid, and it was validated by external parties. So we had delivered the design phase, and the design worked. The boat floated; it didn't sink, and that gave us great confidence, because then what you do is you then take it out and you start resetting your market dynamics based on customer response, which is exactly what we did. And as you said when you spoke earlier, it's you always set out on the journey and you've got an anticipated direction, but you take some 90-degree turns along that road. And that certainly was in our case. We had use cases that we thought were rock solid, that weren't as solid as we thought they were, and we had people who came out of the left field to teach us that there were other applications for our product. So we widen the use case, and in a way you're widening the aperture, aren't you, of the product. You're making the bandwidth a little, you take that myopic focus off and you throw the focus a little bit wider. And then you've got to deliver scale against the proven opportunities, and that's where we are widen about the website. So the scale comes through the international websites for us. South Africa's a great market that looked after us beautifully, but this is about a much bigger world and delivering a much better world. And it's very easy in e-commerce, because if you get certain factors right, you can, as we found out, we had that wonderful experience with Google AdWords blocking us day one. So we had to build this outside of Google AdWords, and we did. And we continue to do it. But we've got a formula now. We can roll it out and can really put our foot down on the gas and get this thing going, because we've got a formula and we know how to do it globally. And the minute those sites are up, Graham, then we'll see all of this start rolling out. But Graham, that leads to you again: consistency, focus, and adaptation. They three words. How have you delivered them?
So, I think I want to just talk about that, is that it's not big things, but it's about showing up every single day, Howard. So consistency is one of those things which is not sexy, it's not cool, it's not all of those sorts of things, but it's the little things that matter. So, whether it's trying to build a brand on LinkedIn, you can't just come and once every 3 months post something and hope you're going to go viral to X gazillion listeners. It's a process of rocking up every day or every 2 days, whatever, and consistently engaging. It's things like when you're engaging with your customers, follow up with them, your partner network you're trying to build. If you say you're going to get back to somebody, get back to them, being intentional around that. And I think those little things, just building them into the way you go about doing business and being consistent around those, are absolutely critical. I think in terms of adaptability, it's not all plain sailing. You have to be prepared to adapt. And I'll talk about that just now, and some of the learnings, Howard, you touched on, some of the challenges we've had with Google AdWords. But you've got to be prepared to adapt. And if something's not working, I think it was Einstein who said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Yes, it's cliched, but it's real. So change it. In the first year, we've changed our pricing strategy 3 times. And coincidentally, there were some really interesting learnings there. Like at a point, we were probably too cheap, and people were looking at our pricing and saying, but yeah, it's cheap, it must be nasty. And the reality is we had to adapt, and we changed some of those things, and we tested, and the results spoke for themselves. So you've got to be prepared to adapt, and don't get hung up on things just because it's an ideal of yours. You have to think about that. And the most important thing, I think, is listening to our customers. So our initial vision was to be a fully digital business. So it was all going to be algorithmically driven, e-commerce. And one of the things we realized with company evaluations is that initially it was some, but most customers want a degree of human connection. They're building something which is quite emotive. To own a business is not just open a business. You're not emotionally detached from that. So, we had to adapt our offering to allow for that. Some customers were quite comfortable not having a human connection, but a lot of them did. So, we developed what we call our concierge offering, where we'll do it with you, and we'll build a process to have face-to-face engagement with you, albeit over Zoom. Or if you're in the same city, we can do face-to-face. Even with our completely online offerings, that review little things like when we respond to customers via email. Templatized emails are great, but when somebody's talking about their business, you need to actually look into their business. You can use AI, you can use tools to guide you, but there's nothing better than a direct email, which is not just selected from a template. So little things like that I think have been really, really important, and we've tried to listen to our customers and respond accordingly. Howard, maybe just the last thing I want to touch on before handing over to the ghost, and it does align to the vision, but the one other thing I learned is that about intentionality is about living the business that you want it to be. And when you start out, it's hard, but part of the reason we try to avoid the word SME, or small and medium enterprises, is that it implies small. And if you think small, you will be small. So it ties back to your point around goal setting and intentionality. You have to live the business you want it to be from day one. So I'm not saying become like a corporate and become bogged down in corporate stuff, but you got to think and act big. And again, there's subtlety here. It's not this, you often fake it until you make it. It's not that either, but it's about genuinely getting up every day and believing that you're going to be able to make a difference in terms of the clients that you serve and make a difference at scale. So it starts with little things. I know it's the age of, we started the business post-COVID, but it's the age of work from home and all of those sorts of things. But for us, it was really important to have our own office space and not just be work from home. So we could bring the team together, on a flexible basis, so we can start to build that culture and that camaraderie. A Google image of a house in suburbia doesn't necessarily give a sense of confidence to somebody valuing their business in London. Okay, so these are little and practical things. The way you dress, Crescendo, who's my assistant, from day one, said, "Listen, Graham, drop the t-shirt when you're on a webinar." So you'll see I've got a collared shirt on. Thanks, Crescendo. But I joke and I say these things in jest. Things like having a board meeting. Not having a board meeting just because we're ticking a governance box, but as founders, we get together once a month. We do the board meeting. We document the minutes or record the minutes, and because we know one day, we will need that. And we think big, even though at this stage we're still small and we're still growing. So those are some of the things that certainly for me have been important this year and have been on my growth journey. I want to kind of hand over to Ghost before we just go into our successes and a couple of learnings or challenges. Is Ghost, maybe you can just talk quickly a little bit about, sort of tech and touch, and what we mean by that, and just kind of bringing together some of the learnings that you've had from your different ecosystems.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Look, I get away with murder by, operating through the pseudonym that suddenly just overtook me a couple of years ago. So I don't have to wear the collared shirts. If Crescendo knew what I was wearing currently, I think she'd have an absolute heart attack. So I'll keep it in my shorts over here. But I think tech and touch, the reality is I haven't been shocked by clients still wanting human interactions. I think your business is the most emotive thing you've probably ever built. And look, I do believe AI is important and automation, and I think we've done a great job of automating a complex process to bring the cost way down and to actually make it, achievable for founders in a certain market segment. But I also love the fact that human interaction still counts for something, which is deeply ironic given my, ghostliness. Obviously, when we work with bizval clients, I'm very happy to kind of meet them and actually do that properly. But tech is a wonderful enabler and you definitely have to use it. I think you just have to recognize that there's a point at which it runs out of road a bit, and then the human interaction is still required. And thank goodness for that, because I think that's part of what makes us human, definitely. So balancing tech and touch has been a big lesson for us, I think. I think we've done it quite well. And then I guess just learnings from different ecosystems. Yeah, I think given that I was operating in the sort of social media and sort of public persona seen a bit before you coming into this business. I remember we had to have many chats where I was like, listen, this takes longer than you think it's going to take. And to your point, you don't just post something and it goes viral. So I guess it's those learnings from those sort of ecosystems that really help actually. And what I also enjoy is the amount I learn from listed companies that we can then bring into conversations with private companies, because there is so much to learn. I'm basically reading every single announcement that goes out on the JSE and writing about it every single day. And a lot of those lessons come down into our clients. If you're speaking to a client in the retail sector, it helps massively to have our finger on the pulse of what's happened in that sector in the last 6 months. What are the pressure points? What's happening? It helps us give a better outcome to our clients and helps us give them also, I think, good advice when they engage us to work deeper with them on stuff like growth strategies, exit planning, which we do with selected clients here and there. So yeah, I think perspective is always important. It's Charlie Munger, who just recently passed away, and a lot of people will know that name. Warren Buffett's sort of right hand man, but anyway, the guy who shaped Berkshire Hathaway's thinking. They always talk about read as widely as you can. Just bring those insights into whatever business it is you're running. And I think that's incredibly important, and it's been quite valuable to us.
Fantastic, Ghost. I'm going to shift the order around a little bit because we were going to talk about what are we proud of, and I'm going to leave that till the end because I always want to end the year on a high. So Howard is, so I'm going to talk about challenges that we faced this year and how did we respond. Howard's already told me I don't need to ask him a question because he hasn't had any challenges this year. So Howard, you get off scot-free. But Ghost, I mean, maybe from your side, if you can just touch on like what has been challenge that you faced this year and how did you respond to that?
Yeah. So I've had the most challenging year of my life personally. I won't dig into those details, but it's been pretty bleak in the background. So I think the importance of doing what you're passionate about is really important, because there are times where that definitely carried me through. I think if I was still in a corporate role that I was kind of rotting away in, and I firmly believe you either are or you aren't an entrepreneur. I don't think it's something you can learn in a book. I think, if you're sitting in a corporate role and you think, okay, this is not too bad, I can go with this, you probably aren't an entrepreneur, because you have no idea how hard it's going to be to leave that job and actually go out into the world on your own. It is the toughest thing you will ever do. You need to be so irritated by going to work every morning and sitting at that desk and having someone else tell you what to do. It has to literally grate you so badly that all you think about is leaving. Then you are probably a true entrepreneur. So yeah, it's been absolute chaos for me this year. The challenges are too numerous to mention, but I am grateful for, I think working in a team environment has made a difference. I think, obviously the finance coast is very much me. There are people who contribute solidly to that ecosystem, but it is a little bit more lonely. And I think that bizval has been more of a team environment, which has been very nice. But yeah, the way to overcome those personal challenges, I think, is to make sure you're spending your time doing stuff you are passionate about, because without that, you're going to really struggle to find anything to get you out of bed in the morning, actually.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, let me touch on something quickly, and I think Howard actually touched on it earlier, but we faced a challenge early on this year, being an online business. About a month in, Google AdWords shut down our advertising account, and our original strategy was to say advertise on Google AdWords and get the message out there. I won't go into the details around it, but safe to say, it's got nothing to do with the product we built. It's got nothing to do with that. But basically, we got caught up in the Google algorithm. We were too much of a startup to get personal support and interrogation, and we were spending a lot of time and energy to saying, well, how do we get onto Google AdWords? And that almost became our sole focus for a month or two. And we actually then just called it and we said, listen, this is becoming a distraction. We built something that we're proud of, that customers are enjoying. Our challenge is how do we get people to know about that? And we made a conscious decision not to focus on getting Google AdWords account reactivated again. We said, how do we think about this differently? And we realized that we needed to connect directly with a lot of you listening in here, the entrepreneurs, people who are trying to solve similar problems with entrepreneurs. And that's where we bedded down, is to really understand what problem were we solving, rather than just having a product that we spend money on shouting from the rooftops. And I think it's actually been a good thing for the business, because it forced us to refocus. It forced us to iterate our product. I think if we had gone and just Google AdWords developed leads, we wouldn't have iterated and developed our product in the same way that we've been able to do that. So yeah, for me, that was a challenge that we had. And I think our response to that was to, kind of, at a point, call it and think about how we solve the problem. Our problem was, how do we get people to know about us? Okay. And, that was a bit of a wake-up call for us. And the other thing around that is we kind of made a conscious decision that we didn't want to build a business that was dependent on one source of failure. You could have a very successful e-commerce business that requires you spending Google ad spend. And if for whatever reason that algorithm changes, you can have challenges. So, that was kind of an unintended consequence of that, is that hopefully we built a business that's got, wider roots, rather than just one single taproot. Maybe to kind of end off the discussion, and there may be one or two questions that pop up. So if anybody has got a question, please pop it in the chat. But just to wrap up, Howard, I mean, one thing that you've been proud of this year, maybe you can just share a little bit about that.
Graham, for me, it's been working with an absolutely amazing team, and it goes back to one of the points you made earlier. You choose your associates very wisely, and I can't reiterate it enough. In my entrepreneurial journey, hiring the right skill set with the right chemistry is critical. I mean, you get people with great skill sets, but you can't get on with them and you can't work with them. It's useless. They'll frustrate you, and you'll end up being angry, and things just go wrong. So choosing people who like-minded and like you help a lot. And I don't know, I just think our team works really well together, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, from the agility of the Ghost being able to deliver us algorithms over an evening or over a weekend, to launch new product, to our Crescendo, who keeps a steady hand on everything, Stephen, who's really recently joined us and brought such a lot of energy and skills into us, and an ability, an extra pair of hands to allow us to do lots of additional things that we might not have done or might not have gotten to. So yeah, the value of team, to me, it's always people. And the business is nothing. I mean, I suppose in a business like ours, where we have a very e-commerce front end, we've always made sure that people understand there's very real people behind the business, apart from our friend with our purple friend with the green tie, the Ghost. He's real,
I mean,
but he's not that real. So yeah, it's our team. It's about team.
And if you can add to that, I think a lot of our partners are also part of the team. So Paul and our development team, it is outsourced, but they as much part of this team. They don't see themselves as service providers; they see themselves as part of the team. I think that's something which is really great. And I say that even for our partners on the distribution side, a lot of them speak about us as we part of their team and they part of our team. So I think that's absolutely true, Howard. Ghost, before I kind of wrap up, I mean, what's the thing that stood out for you that you're most proud of this year?
I think the model works, right? It sounds ridiculous, but I think when you set out to kind of build something that without any human intervention can value almost anything is quite hard. So it was very cool when that actually came out and it works and it's been tested so extensively, and to have a fresh pair of eyes like Stephen come in and have a look at it and test it again and again and again and try and break it. And it's been pretty robust, which is obviously nice. And I think the other thing that I really enjoy is just the reaction we get from founders when they realize that this kind of skill set and experience is available to them, at prices that are not eye-watering at all, actually. I mean, I come from an investment banking environment, doing the big deals in Santon, the suit, the tie, the whole shebang. I've done all of that. And, there are reasons why those deals cost what they cost, because they are fraught with complexity. They really are. Big transactions just become more and more complex. It's like a flywheel effect. But I think that's the whole point. I think for businesses that are, not small, but, an 80 million Rand or 100 million Rand transaction, you don't want to be spending millions and millions and millions on advisors, and nor do you need to. So I think we do a really good job of plugging that gap, which I'm quite proud of, because I think it's hard to run businesses that size anywhere in the world, but specifically in South Africa. And I think to be able to help those sort of entrepreneurs and give them that advice and help them out at a price like this is really cool. It does genuinely make a difference in their lives.
Well, you're talking about valuations in dollar terms yet, Ghost.
It's to compare overseas to local, isn't it?
I think just to wrap up from my side, I think, the one thing that I'm most proud of, and it's obviously, hopefully not a vanity metric, but, is our Google and Trustpilot scores. So we, our customers are everything. And we hear this and in corporate, you hear customer centricity and all of that. But for us, I'm incredibly proud of our 4.9 Google score. Trustpilot, I think, is 4.7, not because we've got, I think, almost all of them. I think we've got 1, 4, and all 5 stars on Trustpilot, but they've got a different algorithm. But I think that for me is what makes me most proud, is that we're actually empowering entrepreneurs, hopefully keeping things simple and explaining things in a way that's understandable. And I think being flexible, but that outward recognition and representation from the customers, kind of validating that has been something that I'm tremendously proud of. I think also listening to the customers. So we had a customer who we thought would be unhappy because their business was worthless. They had paid for a concierge review, and yet when you go to Google, they gave us a sterling review. And why? I think it's because we took the time to explain to them why their business was worthless in inverted comments, and what they could do to make it better. So whilst their business wasn't worth anything, the situation wasn't hopeless. There were actually things that they could do to turn that around, and they had time to do that. And I think that's something I'm proud of, and the fact that we've got an approach that we share freely. Whether it's on our webinars, whether it's on our social media, is yes, we want to engage customers, but we also want to educate and empower entrepreneurs, and that's our core objective. And that doesn't always have to come with an invoice attached to that. So for me, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the wrap on the year. Howard and Ghost, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up the webinar.
No,
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just grateful that the year's come such a good close for us, and we look forward to the new year. And there's a lot of value we're still going to bring, and we're going to introduce our AI aspects and sharpen the whole process up a little bit, enrich customer experience, and bring a great customer experience to our community. So those are the things that I'm excited about for the new year.
Yeah, I think for me, obviously, just definitely looking forward to an easier, better, and more focused 2024. I can actually spend time on the things I want to spend time on. Hopefully, some of that benefit will come through in bizval. I'm sure it will. And yeah, I think next year is going to be a big year for us. I think the biggest step is going to be to really have a go at taking it global. So that's going to be something new and something super exciting, and obviously hoping to get that right. So yeah, I see, Graham, there's a question for you, lastminute.com, that you can get to before the contact details.
Great. So the question was, for a globally focused service, is SA a good place to set up a business? And tech is so important. How did you find and secure the right partner to build your platform and develop the software? So I'm actually going to call in on my CEO mandate here and point to somebody better to answer the question. So Howard, maybe you can tackle the first question there, and it's from Laurie. Thanks for that question. Is SA a good place to set up a business? And the tech question, I think you can answer that too.
Yeah, last question, Laurie, and I think a very topical one. I've spent a fair chunk of my life in the service industry and in the tech industry, and bending those services into foreign markets. So yes, South Africa is a very good place to set up a business if that's what you're doing. Obviously, it's a pricing issue, so you want to make sure that the prices that you're able to offer are internationally competitive, because everything else you do has kind of dollar parity attached to it. So if you buy a machine or you invest in tech, you're paying US dollars anyway. So it's really location and the fact that our wage bill is substantially less than a hard currency jurisdiction, and allows you to drive those services straight into it. I think the second part of your question, tech is important, and therefore your service provider is mission critical. Believe me, you can burn lots of money and lots of time on engaging with the wrong people to deliver that tech. I think we were fortunate in the sense that I had worked in the tech space before and had tenured service providers that we were able to tap into. Having said that, our service provider is not a big business. They're a small little boutique business that's been around for a few years, and they really service us well and take good care of us. So we thank Paul and the team at OmniServe for what they do for us, and we can highly recommend them. So yeah, kind of a bit unfair because we had a lot of experience in weeding out the tech service providers and being able to land a good one. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks, Howard. And yeah, I just want to, in closing off, say, we hope to all the listeners and to all our supporters, we hope you found today's session valuable. And we thank you for the support over the last year. So as Ghost mentioned, we've got great aspirations and plans. So we're going global next year. I'm off to London at the end of January to go and, have a number of face-to-face meetings with some of our partners and that in the UK, and also later in the year in the US. So, just remember, December's a time for reflection. I'm just going to remind everyone you can win a boot camp. So please let your friends and family and everyone know. The easiest option is do an express free valuation. It's going to cost you nothing, and you get an entry into the draw. So with that, we wish everyone a festive and happy holiday season. If you're traveling, travel safe, and a prosperous new year. So thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful day further.